Good evening, and welcome to this meeting of the City Planning Commission. Go ahead and get rolling with the business here with the review of the consent agenda. Denise?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Item 1, approval of May 4, 2016 minutes of regular meeting. Item 2, May plats. Item 3, 4340 2016 rezone from the AG Agriculture District to the CN Conservation RA1 Apartment Residential Low Density, RA3 Apartment Residential High Density, LW Live Work, and C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar Districts for allowed forms located at the northwest corner of East 69th Street and South Sycamore Avenue. Item 4, 4419 2016 rezone from the LW Live Work District to the C3 Commercial Community District for allowed forms located south of West 57th Street, west of South Louise Avenue, and east of South Rolling Green Avenue. Item 5, 4459 2016 rezone from the LW Live Work District to the C3 Commercial Community District for allowed forms located at southeast corner of West 57th Street and east of South Rolling Green Avenue. Item number 6, 4635 2016 rezone from the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District to the RT1 Single Family Residential Traditional District for allowed forms located at 301 South St. Paul Avenue. Item 7, 4637 2016 rezone from the RS Single Family Residential Suburban and RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District to the RS Single Family Residential Suburban and RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District for allowed forms located at east of Southeastern Avenue, south of East 57th Street, and west of South Greystone Avenue. Item 8, 4661 2016 rezone from the C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar District to the RA2 Apartment Residential Moderate Density for forms located at 2601 East 8th Street. Item 9, 4665 2016 rezone from the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District to the C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar District, allowed forms located at 1217 East Rice Street. Item 10, 4693 2016 rezone from the AG Agriculture District to the RR Single Family Residential Rural District for allowed forms located south of West 69th Street and west of South Beale Avenue. Item 11, 4409 2016 preliminary subdivision plan for Phase 1 of Whisper Ridge Addition located at north of East 69th Street and west of South Sycamore Avenue.
Thank you, Denise. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to see an item that was just read on the consent agenda be moved to the regular agenda? Hearing none. Commissioners, any of those items we'd like to see moved to the regular agenda? Very well. I'll look for commission action.
Mr. Chair, move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is approved. We'll move on to the regular agenda. Can I have a motion from the commission to approve the regular agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the regular agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor of approval of the regular agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Item 12, 4607 2016 rezone from the C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar District to the C3 Commercial Community District for allowed forms located north of West 26th Street and east of South St. Michael's Circle.
Good evening, I'm Diane DeCoyer.
Diane,
Excuse
if I
me.
may, real quick.
Sure.
If anyone in the audience was here for items 1 through 11 on the consent agenda, those have passed, and you may feel free to leave. Just wanted to catch up on that there. Sorry, thank you.
That's okay. Diane DeCoyer with the Planning Office. The applicant for this petition is Paul Reynolds with RCM Services. He's requesting a rezone for 2.3 acres at West 26th Street and east of St. Michael's Circle. The site is currently vacant. To the north of this site is an existing RA2 moderate density apartment building for seniors. To the east, it is zoned conservation, and to the south across West 26th Street is a big box home improvement store and a vacant site zoned as C4 commercial, where an auto dealership is planned. A level B buffer yard is required along the north property line where it's adjacent to the apartments. The level B buffer yard includes a 15-foot setback, a 2-foot berm or 4-foot fence, and 30 units of landscaping per 100 lineal feet. As an option, the applicant can encroach into the buffer yard by 5 feet. That requires instead a 4-foot fence within the buffer yard and the same number of landscape units. The parcel is located within an existing commercial corridor and in close proximity to an interstate exit, I-29 and West 26th Street. The proposed parcel will have direct access to a signalized intersection at Homefield Drive and West 26th Street. Finally, a proper land use transition will exist from the limited access arterial street at West 26th Street to the medium density apartment uses to the north, and finally to the existing church and school west of the apartments. If the rezoning request to C3 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar District is approved, the RA form can be utilized on the parcel. This form allows a retail building of 75,000 square feet or less and no more than 250 parking stalls dedicated to the building. If the rezoning is denied, the parcel will continue to be zoned C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar and would allow for the RA3 form. This form allows for a retail building up to 25,000 square feet and no more than 167 parking stalls. The RE form allows the building less than 75 square feet. The RE4 form allows for buildings less than 75,000 square feet, and although the proposed project is 28,400 square feet, if the property changes ownership, it could allow for a much larger building on this site. A larger building would adversely affect the surrounding school and senior residential. Therefore, staff recommends the building size not exceed 30,000 square feet. With the following conditions, staff recommends approval of the rezoning. Number 1, the proposed building not exceed 30,000 square feet. And 2, prohibited land use of off-sale and on-sale alcohol and adult uses. And I can answer any questions you might have.
Commissioners, any questions for Diane? Great.
I had one. The 30,000 square foot limitation would pass on to future owners as well?
Yes.
Okay.
The applicant is here if you have any further questions.
I'm sorry?
The applicant is here if you have any other questions.
That's very good. Thank you, Diane. Would the applicant please step forward? And if you could, please state your name and address for the record.
Okay. I'm Paul Reynolds with RCM Services, 4402 South Technology Drive.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there any member of the audience that would like to address item number 12? All right, seeing none, we'll look for commission action.
Just to clarify with the two, with the 30,000, not to exceed 30,000, and not to have off-sale alcohol, on-sale alcohol, and adult uses.
Very good. We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, it seems pretty simple that this is it's a very small increase from what the C2 was and a
good location, so I'm all in favor of it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments, discussion? All right, seeing none. All those in favor of approval for item number 12 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Item number 12 passes.
Item 13, 4677, 2016, rezoned from the AG Agriculture District to the RA2 Apartment Residential Moderate Density and RA1 Apartment Residential Light Density Districts for allowed forms located at 600 North Bonson Avenue.
Good evening. The applicant for this petition is Erica Beck with Lloyd Companies, requesting a rezone for the 6-acre site at the northeast corner of East 6th Street and North Bonson Avenue. The property is also known as the Lacey Estate. There's a home and outbuildings with numerous mature trees on the site. The proposed rezone, to the north of this site is Annie Sullivan Elementary School. To the west is an existing RA2 moderate density apartment building and RD1 twin homes. To the east is Kenny Anderson Park, and to the south across East 6th Street is RS single family homes. The proposed rezone is considered to be compatible to the existing and adjacent zoning districts. Our office did receive numerous phone calls regarding the application with suggestions for other development by the city, but the city had reviewed this property in the past and is not interested in developing it. The applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting regarding the rezone, and I'm sure she can answer any questions the commissioners have about the meeting when she steps up to the podium. The property is located between 2 regional employment centers. That's at Arrowhead Parkway and Weber, and Veterans Parkway and Arrowhead Parkway. In this case, if the rezoning of this property is approved, the applicant can develop the RA1, which is a low-density apartments to the north, and no more than 2 stories in height and limited to 24 units per building. The RA2 lot to the south, also for moderate density apartment uses with no more than 3 stories in height and limited to 48 units per building. If the rezone is denied, the parcel can continue to be zoned as agriculture for its current use. Because the subject application is consistent with the Shape Sioux Falls Comprehensive Plan, staff recommends approval for this rezoning. And I can answer any questions you might have.
Commissioners, any questions for Diane? Good. Is the applicant here? And if you could please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Erica Beck, 101 South Reed Street.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair, can you talk about the neighborhood meeting a little bit?
Yep, I absolutely can. We had a neighborhood meeting last Wednesday. I think we had about 5 people sign into the meeting. There were well over that in attendance, probably about 40. We held the neighborhood meeting at Oakview Library, which is just north of this site. To some degree because we wanted to get, more of the neighborhood in attendance, but at the same time we felt like it has great proximity to this potential development site, which is one of the things that we find most appealing about it, as well as its proximity to the schools as well. A couple of the comments that we received, I actually outlined the majority of them and sent them to planning staff as well, but I can talk a little bit about those concerns. Many concerns expressed about the level of crime that exists in the neighborhood right now, along with both pedestrian traffic issues and then vehicular traffic issues within the neighborhood. There were also concerns with our proposed development and that exacerbating potential crime in the neighborhood as well, that apparently already exists. There were also concerns over the residents that could potentially live in our apartment units. There were many concerns about green space decreasing overall on the site. And I think those were the majority of the comments that we heard anyway that stood out the most. In response to some of those comments, a lot of the things that we talked about were just that we were trying to look at this overall project as a large-scale development. So we're trying to look at how best can we utilize the entire 6 acres of the site and not necessarily just look at it project by project. which I think that does a couple of things for us anyway, and for hopefully the residents that could potentially live here. First and foremost, we've tried to consolidate parking, which then allows us to consolidate the green space and make it even larger, which we feel is important. And I think that to some degree addresses some of the concerns that the neighborhood had as well. There were a lot of concerns about kids walking on Bonson home from school and getting into a little bit of mischief maybe along the way, whether it's in someone's front yard or in someone's side yard. And so I feel like if we have some of those amenities on site, which really our residents are going to demand anyway, then we won't necessarily have that degree of problem. The other thing that we tried to talk about a little bit was just our practices with respect to property management. So Lloyd Companies overall has been managing properties for 44 years when Craig and Pat founded the company. And we've been doing so, I think, in a pretty respectful way. We do criminal background checks on every resident that comes and lives in one of our units. We do regular inspections of units. We also participate in the City of Sioux Falls crime-free program. And because of those types of things, I'd like to believe, and I think I can say with certainty, that we hold ourselves to a higher standard when it comes to property management. And I would hope that anyone that would visit any of our properties would see that reflected as well. Also, with respect to the placement of the buildings, we tried to keep the more dense zoning, the RA2 versus the RA1, along 6th Street. And primarily because 6th Street is a major collector. At some point in the very near future, it's going to connect to Highway 100, and that is going to increase traffic overall just naturally. But also, we did that for a couple of other reasons too. And one is because, 6th Street has it's a bus route, one, and two, it also provides great connectivity for our residents in the future to be able to access employment centers, which is really important for us. And so because of the proximity to the schools and then also the proximity to 6th Street, we felt like it's an appropriate site for multifamily living in the future. We also talked about overall just the units themselves. And so if you've noticed up there, we had RA2 and then RA1 shown. We envision rents anywhere from $550 a month to $1050 a month on this site. There were a lot of questions at the neighborhood meeting as to whether or not this was going to be low-income housing. I used the example of $550 to $1050 a month, and is that low-income housing to you? As an example, we had the opportunity where we could go forth and make application for state funds, which for one of these buildings that would give us the ability to restrict income levels within the building. The rents would still be between $550 and $1050 a month if we were to do that. So it's a different type of funding source, not a different type of resident. And I stressed that at the public meeting as well. Another thing that we really like about this site, again, and I think if you've heard me talk about this before or heard any of the recent media attention, we get a lot of questions from residents. We manage over 4,200 multifamily residents within the City of Sioux Falls and the surrounding communities. We get a lot of questions about why we don't try to build closer to schools when and if appropriate, because we have a lot of families that move into our community, especially those that are seeking employment opportunities, that want a safe route for their kids to get to school. And I feel like this site gives us that opportunity to provide those families with a safe route to not only Ann Sullivan Elementary on the north, but also Washington High School, so your teenage kid doesn't have to drive to school, which I think is important. And then also it gives us access to other amenities like the Oakview Library as an example. So because of all of those things, I mean, we felt like it's an appropriate site for us to pursue. It's my understanding that the site's been on the market or been for sale for 3 years, I believe. We've been trying to take a look at it and determine, the best approach. What's the market in the area? What is the level of rents that we could potentially charge on this site? And can we make a project work? The thing that I really like about this site, obviously the same thing that the existing residents around here like, are the mature trees. So we have every intention of trying to save as many of those as possible. Are we going to save them all? No, we can't. We just can't with the building placement that's going to occur here. But at the same time, because of our ability with this layout, this potential layout, to condense that green space and open space, I think we'll be able to save more than we could had we not approached it that way. That's just kind of an overview of what it is that we're trying to accomplish here and what some of the comments were from the neighborhood, but I'd be happy to address any additional concerns or questions that you might have.
Commissioners? One last quick question here then, Erica. On that site plan, the tentative site plan, would you regard the trees to the north and to the east edges of the property, those would probably be priority to attempt to preserve?
Right. We want to, especially the ones on the east side, right up against the park, I think those are going to be the easiest for us to preserve. And then on the north side, we would love to have the opportunity. First and foremost, I'll just preface this by saying that we haven't had that conversation with the school district yet, but we would love to have a direct access to the school for our kids right on that north side of the boundary. So absolutely, we want to maintain as many trees as possible, but at the same time, we would love to open that up a little bit and give those kids and families that are going to be potentially living on the site easier access to the school as well.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address item number 13? And as you step forward, I would remind you to state your name and address for the record, and also if we can keep our testimony to 5 minutes, that would be great.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Mike McDonald. I live at, my wife Beth and I live at 400 North Locust Avenue. Now that is 1 block directly south of the project. My wife also owns the house at 3701 East 6th Street, which is directly across from the proposed project. We've lived here for 33 years and have seen the area grow up around us. We built our house at the same time as the Browns moved onto their properties. We know them well, we are friends, we definitely understand their desire to sell their property and downsize. However, this is not a good plan for the neighborhood. We went to the neighborhood meeting with the Lloyd companies hoping to see a plan for this property that would fit in our area. We were shocked to see the plan, and we were not alone. I would venture to say most of the people behind me tonight were like us. They were shocked, they were confused, they were upset. There was anger at the meeting, and outside of the owners of the property, I would say everybody in the meeting was unanimously opposed to it. The greatest opposition to the area is the proposed RA2 zoning. The Lloyd plan calls for 2 3-story, 40-unit apartment buildings built as close to 6th Street as you legally allow. In between will be an acre of blacktop and concrete with very little green space and almost all of the mature trees gone. We have 3 primary concerns with the project. The first is traffic. With 143 units proposed, there is a potential for 200 to 250 cars in this development. All of them have to exit onto Bonset through 2 curb cuts. A large portion of these cars will go through the 6th Street and Bonset and Locust Avenue intersection. If you want to look at that closely, you'll notice that that intersection is irregular. Bonset and Locust do not line up. This causes a real traffic problem at that corner. It causes a problem with the crosswalk. The children crossing there in the morning going to Annie Sullivan, or later in the day going up to Kenny Anderson, have a very fast, very quick walk light to get across there on. There's a lot of traffic on 6th Street. This is going to bring even more problems with people turning off of Bonson across those crosswalks. We think it's going to be a potential problem in the future, a much greater problem than it is right now. I also want to note that on North Bonson, it's heavily used by parents, bringing their kids to school and picking them up in the afternoon. We're afraid that overflow parking from these apartments will be taking up those parking places. The afternoon, I've noticed the afternoon traffic up there before, and it is backed all the way almost down to 6th Street waiting to pick up kids. This is only going to exacerbate that problem up there. Second concern is with the project is drainage. Lloyd's plan shows no provision for stormwater retention. The RA2 area will have approximately 40 to 45% of blacktop and concrete on it. The other 20 to 25% will be a building roof space, allowing maybe 25% of green area left in that RA2 zone. That means that 65 to 70% of this property is going to have to drain directly onto either 6th Street or Bonson. Right now, we collect on our street, Locust Avenue. We get the overflow once there's a heavy rain. Most of us do not feel that the storm inlets on 6th Street or on Bonson are going to be adequate to handle it, and we don't see any plan from Lloyd as to how they're going to deal with this. A number of my neighbors can attest to the fact that after a heavy rain, they have to clean up the dirt and debris that comes down from 6th Street. With an acre more or 2 acres more of parking up there, we can just imagine how much more is going to come down at us. Our third concern is that the project will remove 6 acres of beautiful green space. And it will replace it with large apartment buildings, concrete, and blacktop. The Lloyd plan to build right up to the 25-foot setback and also to the 10-foot setback on the backside indicates that they have no serious plan for landscaping the property. Hundreds of mature trees will have to come out. Now the hundreds is my guess, maybe 100 plus, I'm not sure, But you can imagine that there are going to be very few of these mature trees are going to be able to survive because of how close they're going to build to the lot lines. My wife and I, together with most of our neighbors that we've talked to on Locust Avenue, strongly urge you to deny this rezoning request. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, any questions for the speaker? Very good. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to present new testimony on item number 13? Good evening. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Joy Schrader, and I currently live at 908 North Caleb Avenue, but I previously lived just down the street from Mike on Locust Avenue. If you've not been to that site personally, it's difficult to understand what it does mean to the community to remain as a green space. I also spoke to the principal at Annie Sullivan's school who did attest that there would be someone represented by the Sioux Falls School District at this meeting from their properties division. I don't know if there's anyone here that can speak to that, but one of the concerns that as a parent with a small child in the school system, specifically at Annie Sullivan, that the school is already overcrowded. It is filled to the gills, and with the large number of units that will be added there, that I can't even imagine statistically what that will do to the population of that school district. I don't know if that would mean additional redistricting, if more kids in the Cleveland area would be shuffled over to Terry Redland, or how that would lay out, but it would significantly affect the enrollment at Annie Sullivan. And so I would hope that you would at least consider any information that the school district is able to provide on the capacity levels there. And I agree also with Mike regarding the traffic. Because of it being the cockeyed intersection, cars that are coming from the east don't know enough to stop back where the stop line is. And so any of the traffic that is attempting to turn out from Locust always has a difficult time. It took years and years before the city actually marked that stop line back far enough to where it is marked, but it's not always acknowledged as the particular place that they should stop. So it is a difficult intersection to get out of, as it is for anyone that's residing on Locust Avenue. And I also agree that the traffic situation there, the incredible number of vehicles that will be trying to pass through that and around the Annie Sullivan district and the residential area to the west is going to be significant. So I too respectfully request that you deny this proposal.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners? Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to item number 13?
Good evening. My name is John Nordley, and I live at 404 North Locust Avenue, located less than 300 feet on the south side of the 600 North Bonson rezone. I've lived in the area since 1959. I grew up directly across the street from it. I used to take the mail up in the winter to Grandma Lacey on that place. My wife, Valoy, and I built our home 17 years ago on a dead-end street, Locust, that one might think would be less affected by the project we discussed tonight. Unfortunately, that's not so. There are several neighborhood problems that need to be addressed, and if not carefully considered before and during the development of the Bonson property, will inevitably be worse. First of all, traffic at 6th Street and Bonson is presently an issue. Although cars always speed by on 6th Street and quite often run a red light on Bonson intersection, in fact, less than an hour ago while I was waiting on Locust to get onto 6th Street, I witnessed a pickup truck going through a red light. The issue is worse when the school is in session, when school, both Washington and Sullivan. We have the traffic from Washington High with the kids coming and going, and Annie Sullivan Elementary with parents dropping off and picking up younger children, not to mention bus traffic. The traffic lines get miserably long with patience of the drivers tested. I visited with the principal of Annie Sullivan earlier today and discovered that the crossing patrol had been pulled from the intersection because it was deemed too dangerous for them to be standing that close to the speeding traffic on 6th Street. What does that say for the students that have to navigate the crossing on their own when going to school? I have one neighbor that walks his children to school every morning and meets them after school to teach and keep them safe. There are over 200 parking spaces in the Bonson apartment plan, 236 to be exact, all exiting from 2 driveways on Bonson Avenue. Many of those cars will be trying to enter the streets during the busiest times going to work or school. This is a problem that needs to be addressed. It is bad now and unfortunately will be made worse with this proposed project. Secondly, stormwater in the area is already a problem and has the potential for being much worse. In heavy rains, the storm sewers on 6th Street are inadequate to handle the present runoff, and the water flows like a river down Locust Avenue. If you stand at the intersection of 6th Street and Locust or Bonson and look, you can easily see it's uphill to the north. It flows down. If you look to the east, you see that there's a rise. If you look to the west, there is also another rise. So it funnels that area, and the water that overflows runs right down Locust, making it a river if we have a heavy rainstorm. This already happens, as I said, with 6.6 acres of land, actually, being considered for apartments, for the most part being green space absorbing a great amount of the water. I was appalled when looking at the site plan and discovered that RA2 area being proposed directly on 6th Street has roof and paving covering some 70% of the surface area of that RA2 development. Minimum green space of required 25 feet setbacks is all that's left to absorb the rainwater. The play area, green space, RA1, is to the north of the RA2 and will do little to mitigate water from the higher density apartment buildings. This is an area where stormwater management BMPs need to be carefully considered and put in place to avoid making the issue worse. I attended the neighborhood meeting with an open mind and not predisposed to object to the construction of apartments. Frankly, I see apartment buildings as one of the few options for the Bonson property. I didn't say a word at the meeting, but listened attentively and heard many viewpoints, many of which I disagreed. Unfortunately, many good questions were left unanswered by the people holding the meeting. What bothered me in looking at the plan was the density of being proposed in the construction of these buildings and the lack of sensitivity to the existing green space and neighborhood experience. I think that with lesser dwelling density, perhaps RA1 to help traffic concerns, careful consideration to BMPs such as pervious paving, retention ponds, and berms to control peak runoff and pollution issues, and perhaps a bit more sensitivity to what presently exists in green space beauty, this could be a good project. Without this, I am opposed to the project and respectfully ask you to deny or postpone zoning approval until answers are sought. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nordley. Any questions, commissioners, for Mr. Nordley? Thank you, sir. At this point, little out of order maybe, but I would like to have staff come back up to the podium quick. There's been a recurring theme of concerns around drainage and traffic. And just as a reiterate to the audience and to the members here, this board, this commission deals with land use matters. And when it comes to traffic, when it comes to drainage, those items move on to other city departments. And Jeff, if you could maybe expound a little more on those kind of concerns, maybe in a more global fashion.
Sure, and I'll just transition from where you're stating to some of the neighborhood questions and concerns. Jeffrey Schmidt, Chief Planning and Zoning Official for the City of Sioux Falls. What we're at this point right now is there's a lot of neighborhood issues here. There's a lot of neighborhood people here, but we're hearing the same theme over and over. They have basically, at this point, three main concerns. Two of the concerns we've heard typically when we have large audience participation. It's drainage and traffic. That's the two that we always hear. The third is property values. So we haven't heard property values tonight, but we always hear drainage and traffic. So traffic's always a tough thing to address. This one's really difficult because of the offset. I don't have an answer for how we're going to handle the traffic out there. The situation that we're going to have to always look at, though, is the road at 6th Street and with Botson able to handle the capacity? Okay. We do not have issues and concerns at this point being brought forward from the traffic department or the traffic engineer. One of the things that I'll continue to go back to on all of these staff reports is the school district, the police, the fire, for crime relations, for drainage, every department gets to review these staff reports before they come before you and before they go to city council. And we don't have concerns listed by any department at this point. So traffic's not being listed as a major issue and concern. I know there's neighborhood issues and concerns. They're raising them, but the experts in the field aren't raising issues and concerns. They're not any more or less than anywhere else in the city of Sioux Falls. So there's where traffic is. Drainage is easier to address. The neighbors are saying there's a drainage issue up here right now during heavy rains. It will not be any worse than it is now, okay? When the apartments get built out there, they have to handle the drainage on their site. They cannot exacerbate the problem. They have to address the drainage. Now that's different than traffic. Drainage, they have to take care of the drainage on their property. They cannot push any more drainage off their site than is already coming off of their site. So that's how that is. The other issue in regards to how much landscaping they have on their site and how much they would like to have, again, I understand that need. I would like to see more open space, but we as staff ask that of applicants all the time. And when single-family homeowners come in, I look at their lots and go, you're building too big of a house. Why don't you not build a 3-stall garage? And they go, but I can have a 3-stall garage. And I go, I know, but how about you put a single-stall garage in instead of a 3-stall, and then we could have less drainage coming off their site. Well, I can't make them do that. They have a property right to build a 3-stall garage in a 6,000 square foot house, and they're going to do it. It's the same situation here. If they have a property right to build this, they can build this apartment complex with as much landscaping or as little landscaping as possible. The third issue is the school district. Again, the school district's aware of it. They know how many students they have there. They're going to run the numbers on how many students are going to be coming out of this apartment. We put it in our comprehensive plan. We had a month of meetings throughout the month of May talking about densities and how many kids are coming into the school district. We advertise it. They'll run the numbers. They'll see it. They'll either adjust or they won't. It's always going to be an issue at the elementary schools, but at the same time, the Sioux Falls School District, and I can't necessarily speak for them, but they're going to look at the numbers and adjust accordingly. It's either a positive for them or it's a negative for them, but at this point, they're looking at how many kids are coming into their school district and they're adjusting accordingly. So, traffic, drainage, school enrollment, it's kind of the issues on the floor at this point. So anything that the commissioners may have for me.
Mr. Chair? One other question, Jeff. There was one comment about the RA2
Yes.
on 6th instead of being farther away from 6th. Can you talk about how typically the transitions go away from the corners and then out?
And we purposely highlight in bold the zoning that's coming forward. So in Jason's exhibit up here that for Diane, it's ag and RA2, but if you look at the smaller one to the left, the existing apartments are RA2. So they're matching up with what's already out there. So Nick's question is, they wouldn't flip-flop it. They wouldn't put the RA1 up front and the RA2 to the back. So the RA2 is typically more on the corner, and then you go internal to the neighborhood, and then you down zone it as you go in. That's the same thing they did. They went RA2. They didn't request at that point to go RA1. They went straight from RA2 to RD1. Here they're just going RA2 to RA1 to the school district. So that's how they transitioned here. And again, with our zoning ordinances, they'll have to meet the lighting standards, they'll have to meet the parking standards, the landscaping, the height requirements, the building code. They have to meet all the city standards for when they do construction.
Thank you.
And Jeff, if you could address, and I heard a few things beyond just the specific drainage, but concerns about having much more impervious surface area and having runoff and a potential for BMP. Could you just address kind of what the concerns are there?
There's going to be more impervious out here on this site than there is probably currently. So as they bring in those construction drawings, those get addressed by drainage engineering, and then they have to be self-contained on the site. So anything that they show here with the rooftops, the structures, and the parking lots, they have to address that drainage on this site. Again, but we're not looking tonight about the framing of the building or how many units. This is a rezoning request. We're not looking at the pipe size for water or sanitary sewer. All those issues will be addressed when they bring in the building plans as well as the drainage, and they have to meet the drainage standards.
And that's by city ordinance, correct?
By city ordinance, city requirement. Correct.
Thank you.
That was my question. This is a rezoning request.
Correct.
And what you're saying is that in the process of obtaining additional approvals and review of those requests, that the issues of drainage as well as traffic would be looked at and
administratively. Correct. The traffic, the drainage, the fire hydrants, the water pipes, the sanitary sewer, any of those issues have to meet city standards and city ordinances. And so there's no need to have a public hearing on them. They just have to meet the requirements that we have in place. And so that's one of the things that I think, I don't know if it helps the neighbors, but when I'm sitting out there listening, you know, it's really one of the questions that comes up more and more frequently at these harder to, where we have a lot of neighbors. It's not on a specific site like this, but if you want the city to have higher standards, to have more landscaping, it's not on a site like this, it's throughout the community. Okay, and John and I, we've talked about this recently, that if you want the city to require sites to have more landscaping, then it's everywhere. Not at 6th and Bonson, but 6th and Bonson and every site. Then we make that the law and say instead of 10-foot setbacks, why don't we require 25-foot setbacks? Why not 40-foot setbacks? And then everybody has to do that. But then when you point your finger at somebody, then it's usually pointed back at you and you go, well, see, then I didn't really want my business to have to do that. You're like, well, then why did they have to do it? But I agree. I think we should require everybody to have more landscaping and put more trees in, to have less parking and not just one location.
Very good.
Jeff, I just have one other question. Can the commission request that the Path Committee review this at their next meeting in August 2016?
Yes. What Sharon's talking about is the city, the school districts, the police department look at safe trips to school, making sure that pedestrians can get to it safely. So we can raise this up to the path committee to make sure that they're looking at not only the current and existing going into summer and spring, or summer to fall, but if a proposal would come through, what would be their suggestions for how to address this, so we can raise this issue up to the path committee to look at pedestrian access.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Jeff. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to present new testimony beyond the subject matter that we've already covered?
Hi, my name is Lori Wyka, and I live at 913 North Savannah Drive, which is right off of 3rd Street between Annie Sullivan and Washington High School. I had called in today. I'm not sure who I talked to, but it was someone from the city. It was the phone number to call about questions on this. And I had asked her if there had been a full traffic analysis done for this proposal, and she said that there had not been one done. And I would ask that one would be done before approval for this to go through. Just because there is so much traffic going up there. I know he said that no other departments had called in with concerns about this, but I would ask that you guys would consider doing a traffic analysis before this goes through.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions for Ms. Wiga? Okay.
Will that be done in the path committee?
No, not in the path committee, but maybe Jeff, do you want to address that?
A full traffic study, full traffic reports required by engineering design standards if it meets certain warrants, is what the terminology is. If it meets certain demands, if there's certain issues that's by an engineering design standard, then it's required to be done. And at this point, it's not meeting those standards, it's not meeting those regulations or requirements. So again, Public Works Engineering didn't say it's needed. There's not a requirement for it. So again, as they called in and they asked our staff, we said it just wasn't needed at this point.
Okay.
But again, they're asking you if you wanted to defer it and send it back to do a study, but it's not something where you just, okay, and then we'll have it done tomorrow morning. It would take thousands of dollars and significant time to do it. And at this point, engineering is saying it wasn't required.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else who would like to address the commission with new testimony?
My name is Jay Root. I live at 3914 East 3rd Street. And so you haven't done a study then, right, Jeff, for traffic?
They didn't require it.
Okay. All right. It's an issue, especially when Washington gets out, and also when all the parents come from wherever, but they're just coming down that street all morning, dropping their kids off, rotate out, head out again, and they hit Bonson. Really, when are they going to end up getting to Rice Street with Bonson? Because a lot of these people had to Citibank, Morels, all that. What you're doing, you're funneling them back into 6th Street. And if not, you're going over to, what's that other street that they cross over where you can get to Cleveland. And it's so tough at that time of day. And I agree that I would pull my kid off that guard walk with all the traffic going through there, because people are going to work and they want to get to work. And if they're like my late wife, I hate to say this, but she was always 10 minutes late. And when you drop your kids off, you're screaming down the road. But boy, if you can get Bonson all the way down to Rice, it'd be great. And you can also, and this is a park. There's 2 schools on a park. And we're going to turn around and take a chunk of that and put big apartment complex up there. When you could have a nice little water park for the kids, you could have a lot of different things, and I understand the amount of money that he wants for that property. That would really be tough to dig up that amount of funds. But this is a section. It's got football fields, soccer fields, softball fields. It's got everything, playground. Who's going to use that playground? Are a lot of our kids that are in our neighborhood going to be able to use it? Why would they? I mean, that apartment complex is going to overload that. And also, too, do you want to have your kids walking by these huge apartments and they're by themselves, and I guarantee you there's no drinking in the park and no drinking on school property, but if they don't have a fence completely around there, people are going to go into that park and sit down and have a couple of beers at a picnic table, and they're going to go play soccer or softball, and they're going to be drinking on the park. And then once they throw their cans and beer and into them garbage, kids will go over there and mess around with it, and they'll think it's really cool because they saw their dad drink. We got rid of the big softball fields over there because that's what the big problem was. They were going to allow drinking when Hanson was around, and we got that dismissed because of the alcohol issue and the late nights. They were going to put an all-weather field in there for softball, and they could be playing till 2 in the morning with the lights on. So, I mean, we've been dealing with stuff. This is a perfect place for kids. And if anything, we need more places for senior citizens, and that's not because I'm old, but it'd be nice to have some facilities for us that we can go enjoy the park and volunteer at the school and help kids out, grade school kids. And remember, low income, there's a lot of people that are not from America going there. When they have 14 different languages, and your daughter or son or granddaughter and son are going to school there and they want to learn, but the teachers spend more time dealing with the different languages trying to get these kids to understand English. And they turn out to be their main interpreter for the family. But I don't know, I get fired up. But I think it's a park. Let's try to use it as a park. And there's a lot of other property within a few blocks that have already been zoned for something like that. And I don't understand why. Well, I know why. It's because of the amount of money that he's going to get for the property. But I would think that there would be, not too often, I don't know, you guys know too, there's not that many great parks. And this is a great park between a high school and a grade school. And boy, you can't ask for something better than that. And we were promised a swimming pool many years ago, and since we didn't get the softball fields, Hanson says that probably ain't going to happen. So I apologize for going on, probably went over my 5 minutes, but I think you need to consider that this is a park, and you definitely need a road study or a traffic study, and I'd like to thank the Sioux Falls Police Department. We've called them, and they've done really well coming over there and cleaning up some of the guys that are playing soccer over there, and they're drinking and partying, and they abuse the park, but now the police have really come in and helped us out, and the Parks Department has too. And they need someone managing that park day and part of the night. And also, I heard two of these apartment complexes not going to have an on-site manager. And who do you go complain to? Get on the phone? And then what happens too with snow removal? All that snow, where are you going to put it in that parking lot? They got a little green area in there, and no one's going to go there. They're going to go to the big swing sets over by the school. They're not even going to utilize that. They got that play area in the center. If you look, well, they don't have that one up, but yeah. Playing in the enter, where are they going to move the snow?
Thank you. I want to make sure that you have new items, and I think you're touching on items we've already discussed in different ways. So, private property maintenance is their responsibility to take care of the snow. Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, are there any members of the audience that have new things to talk about related to item 13?
I'm Doug Lunstra. I live at 301 North Locust Avenue, south of this proposed project.
I'm sorry, what was your name?
Doug Lunstra.
Lunstra, thank you.
I could echo all of the things that have been discussed here. You look at the plan up there and go back to the previous drawing of the property that you had up there. I would challenge Lloyd to identify those mature trees. They're going to save all they can. Look at the plan. They won't save a one. My biggest concern is Lloyd Properties. They did the townhouses, they call them, on East 6th Street a year and a half, 2 years ago. They had the sidewalks tore up for nearly a year. It took, I'll bet, 20 calls to the city. Schools open, sidewalks are tore up, controlled intersections a half mile apart, no place for the kids to get across. They put a sidewalk closed sign up, no place to go. When I complained enough, they finally got a piece of sidewalk put back in, put a construction trailer right on the sidewalk. They close off 6th Street on the eastbound lanes so they can park their equipment, unload construction equipment and whatnot. If they don't have the property to build the house or the proper buildings, why allow them to build it? Very bad practice with how they built those previous townhouses. Don't see any change here. Listen to Jeff. We don't worry about any of this stuff until it becomes a problem. We'll rezone it, then what happens? We got the flooding, we got the traffic. Oh, we didn't know. Did the city approve the draining plans on the Sanford when before Lake and Cole houses flooded? Yes. Good job. You prevented that, didn't you? That's what I'm worried about. I live at the bottom end of Locust. That's going to come down there. When we have a heavy rain, my house will be flooded. And he'll say, oh, we looked at it, we approved it. It doesn't do any good. It needs to be looked at now before it's rezoned. Thank you.
All right, any questions for Mr. Lunstra? Thank you, sir. Okay, I will reiterate new items that haven't already been discussed, please.
Okay. I have a couple of things that can I pass them out? Some pictures?
That'd be fine.
My name is Sandy Preheim, and I live at 725 North Montgomery Court, right across from Annie Sullivan. I've lived in the neighborhood for 50 plus years, and I have seen the neighborhood change, especially in the last 5 years. I no longer feel safe in my neighborhood. I have, and especially when I heard that these 6 apartment buildings were going up, I was devastated. I've made a couple of reasons why I feel this way. You're adding 6 apartment buildings to an already saturated area, and as you can tell from that first document, all of the red circles are apartment buildings just in that small immediate area. And I think I counted like 28. The other thing is the crime. That is my biggest concern. The crime has extremely increased, and you can tell by the next sheets I put in there are the law logs from the Sioux Falls Police Department, and you can access those yourself on siouxfalls.org. You just have to put the address in, and it'll tell you all the details of the police calls. And there's a certain number of places that have a lot of calls. One of them is the Redwood Apartments on 6th and Bonson, which is right across the street from the apartment that we're talking about. That is a problem area. The other problem area is another set of apartments that's over by Sycamore and Ronning. That's another place where the police are called at least 2-3 times a day, if not more. And I think just running there constantly takes away from other emergencies that the police officers are needing to make. And I've talked to several police officers, and they feel that way as well. They probably, I don't know if they should have admitted that to me, but anyway, they have mentioned it. The other thing, the library. The library is an after-school, the Oakview Library is an after-school daycare center. Police are called there on a regular basis. I put that in there too, the law log. I can't imagine how that library is going to handle all of the children from these 6 apartment buildings when they already have an extreme amount of trouble there. We have a dog, and we walk him every day. And we are to the point, in the summertime, he doesn't like the sun, and so we have to wait until it's darker and the sun goes down. We can no longer do that. We do not feel safe walking on 3rd Street in front of Annie Sullivan and Washington High School after dark. It is not safe. Another thing that when I was walking around the neighborhood talking to my neighbors, a couple of them had mentioned that this is that they thought maybe this is possibly a historical site. I don't know anything about that, but that's something that somebody should probably think about. And maybe that area needs to be preserved. I'm not really up on that. Some of the other pictures that I have put in there are of apartment buildings, and I don't know if you've noticed them. The first apartments were the redwood, and you can tell those are not taken care of. They are dumps. I feel bad for anybody who has to live in them. Same with the Holiday Manor, extreme amount of garbage. The garbage does not get picked up. And eventually on a windy day it comes in our neighborhood. Also, the third apartment picture that I put in there was Ashbury, excuse me. And those are on East 6th Street, and I believe those are managed by Lloyd. As you can tell, one of the garages is missing completely the siding. There is graffiti on the backside of the next apartment. And also the pavement is completely tore up in this particular apartment. And all of the garages in that lineup, every last one of them is dented. There's the paint around the trim. There's no paint. They are extremely run down. And I was thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, is the Ashbury Apartments where the boy fell out of the 3-story building from the 3rd floor, where the building did not have a screen on the window. I'm not sure if that is the apartment, but it said 4700 East 6th, and that is Ashbury, which is managed by Lloyd. Let's see here. I don't know, at the meeting that we had at the library, it wasn't determined completely yet whether it's going to be low income, but I feel like all the low income are coming to the east side. I don't understand why they're all being pushed to the east side, which is where I live. And one last point. When I was going around from talking to my neighbors, they were telling me, good luck with the fight. I've never seen anybody win. You're not going to win against the city. You're wasting your time. You'll never stop it. So I kept thinking that. Why are they saying that? Because we're having a meeting. We're going to be able to talk about it and discuss it and approve and talk about things that aren't going to work and are going to work. So I really do hope that that's not the truth and that people's perception of this kind of meeting is not true, and that I'm wasting my time. And I hope you take my comments into consideration and deny this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Ms. Priam? Thank you very much. Anyone else from the audience for new testimony for item number 13? And again, this would address items that have not been previously covered.
Good evening. I'm Jim Holloway. I live at 904 North Archer Drive, about 5 blocks away from the proposed site. Again, I live on Archer Drive, as we like to call it, Archer Speedway, because of the high volume of traffic that we get. It's used as a cutoff or a shortcut between Bonson and Madison, over to Cleveland, I should say. And what happens is we have a tremendous amount of traffic flow coming off of Cleveland, coming up Madison, up Archer, and then over to the schools. In the same way, of course, on the way out, there's a lot of feeder traffic that comes in off the interstate. But this will just increase that traffic in our area. And I am the biggest thing that I'm concerned about is the safety of our school children. It's awful on Archer. I can only imagine how bad it's going to be if you add this apartment complex. It's, let me just put it this way. There are 88, I counted, I went on Google Earth today, and I counted 88 apartment buildings that are within a mile radius of our neighborhood. That includes up and down Cleveland, down to 10th Street. It includes 6th Street over to Sycamore, and then the apartment buildings that are just east of Washington High. In my opinion, we have the highest density of apartments to residential housing, probably anywhere in the city, and I would challenge in a lot of cities. The increased traffic, I know it's been mentioned, East 6, North Archer Drive, Madison, is going to be very dangerous for our children. I would suggest that space, I know they want a lot of money for it, but as I understand it, it hasn't been sold. It says there's a provision to buy it if this goes through, from what I understand. I may not be correct on that. But I would suggest instead that, as one of the other people mentioned, that we could have a neighborhood swimming pool there, or we could make it an extension of Kenny Anderson Park in some way or another. Or the school district and the city could combine together to make some use out of it. I just think that there's, again, all these other issues, overcrowding, but I would like to say, I know that you addressed the experts have no problem with it, but I would challenge any of those experts to live on one of those streets, on 6th or Bonson or Archer, and tell me the same thing. Tell me the same thing. They would not say that if they were there. That 6th and Bonson intersection is a death trap for these kids. And one other thing I want to mention, Washington High, they send their kids on PE to walk around that big square there that includes going from Sycamore to Bonson up to 3rd and back to Washington High. They're doing that all the time. So there's just the greater likelihood of something happening. And I am concerned about some child with those apartments, having apartments butted up against a school is just not rational or reasonable, in my opinion. So, excuse me, that's all I have. Thank you.
Any questions, commissioners? Thank you. Any additional testimony that hasn't already been discussed related to traffic, drainage, school density?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Eileen Horn, and I live at 704 North Montgomery Court with my husband. I'm nervous. I'm going to try to appeal to you from a different perspective. When we got married 32 years ago, we built our house. At that time, there was a cornfield across the street. Some people are nodding, going, yep, I remember. It was a home for deer, for pheasant, for chukars. We accepted when the land was sold and we were getting a high school, okay? Then we were told we were gonna get a grade school. Okay, now you're gonna get a library. Oh, and now we're gonna play soccer, and we're gonna have pee-wee football. And people are gonna park in front of your houses, and they're gonna open their car doors and drop their garbage. You don't get a lot of calls from our neighborhood, maybe, because we police our own. We pick up our yards. Whoever's talking landscaping, go through our neighborhood. From 3rd Street over, all of our neighborhoods, we own our homes. We take care of our homes, and we take care of our lawns. We have more apartments than any other area. You've already heard that, so I'm not gonna repeat that. But what I am gonna do is I'm gonna appeal to you. If you built your home, and it's your dream home, this is a home that we worked hard to pay for, we worked hard to maintain it, and now we just keep getting crowded more and more and more. Right now, our dentist office is 5 blocks to our east. I made the mistake of taking an 8 o'clock in the morning appointment. I'm not used to it because I work 6:30 till whenever I get home. I had to actually turn right on 3rd Street, go all the way down to Bonson. I had to go over to 6th Street. Now this is school zone, so now I'm driving 15 miles an hour. I get to 6th Street, I wait, I finally get on to 6th. I go all the way up to Sycamore. I turn left, going through the school zone again, to get to my dentist, which should have been a 3-minute drive, ended up being almost a 10-minute drive. And that wasn't with an additional 143 apartments and an additional 250 cars. So I'm going to appeal to you and just ask, please deny this for the sake of our community, our own neighborhood, and everything we have done to maintain our neighborhood, to give Sioux Falls pride. Thank you.
Any questions, commissioners? Thank you. At this point, if there's anyone else that would like to speak, I would also invite a line to be formed behind the next speaker so we can gauge the amount of additional new testimony, again, that has not been based on subject matter that's already been discussed. Please.
Hello, my name is Matthew Capel. I live at 710 North Montgomery Court, which is just directly north of Annie Sullivan Grade School. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming. It's really nice. And I also want to remind everyone, if the city does decide to rezone, that we'll have to meet again at the city council meeting. So I hope to see everybody there if they do decide. I do agree with all the speakers, and I came prepared to talk about the amount of crime, but there is one thing that was quickly discussed that really struck a nerve, and it was the cost of doing a traffic analysis. What is the cost of when a kindergarten kid or another kid at the elementary school is hit by a car? I would defer to you to figure out that cost.
Any questions, commissioners? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Craig Stember. My wife and I own the property of 3800 East 7th Street. Our property borders 6th Street, and the front of the house borders 7th Street. And I get a lot of traffic there, the people coming up to that intersection there. Hard for me to get out of my driveway. There's cars backed up there for the people on 6th Street. So I would like to be put on record as opposed to this here project. That's it.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tony Burke, 804 North Caleb Avenue in Sioux Falls. A newer resident to the community, about 3 years. My wife and 4-year-old, now 5-year-old daughter today, actually. We attend Annie Sullivan Apple Tree Daycare. And to bring up some new topics in particular, as per the chair's comments, a couple of things. I'm here representing the Oakview Neighborhood Association. It's had a lot of correspondence over the last week. It's a very new association that's really talking now. And unfortunately, sometimes it's challenging situations like this that will bring a community together. A lot of people have said we don't make a lot of phone calls, we don't chase things down. Well, I can tell you there's been a lot of communications in the last week and a half around the Oakview Neighborhood Association, and you can see behind me that association is going to grow, I'm sure, after tonight, one way or the other, on looking at this project more closely. I firmly agree with all of the other issues pertaining to traffic, pertaining to drainage, and I'll add to the criminal issues that are going on in our community. I mentioned about the estates that are already there. It's a big challenge. And I would challenge you to think about what a criminal background checks means. That was mentioned earlier tonight, that criminal background checks are done on all residents that go into apartment buildings. I can tell you that the state of South Dakota does not report into a multi-jurisdictional report that's issued. And a lot of these verifying companies just do a national check. Well, we don't report into that. So you're really not getting information on the state of South Dakota residents when you're bringing somebody in, unless you're going to do a county by county search, which is exponentially cost prohibitive for most organizations to do. I don't think that a criminal background check is really worthy to be discussed at this forum, because I think there's a lot more to that jeopardizes our communities. So again, on behalf of the Oakview Neighborhood Association, we're standing here hoping that you would defer this for further study, because I think there is alternate solutions like traffic humps, pedestrian-controlled lights. I can tell you, going back and forth between Apple Tree and home, that people are passing each other to get by on those streets consistently. So I'd urge you to defer it for further study. And I know there's subject matter experts in the city. It's a great city to live in, but I think we need to do some more analysis on this to really understand the impact on all of the issues that were brought forth earlier tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Any questions, commissioners, for Mr. Burke?
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. At this point, I'm going to close the floor for public input with recommendation for commission action.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second? There is a second. Discussion, commissioners. Mr. Chair.
I appreciate the public's testimony and everybody's input into kind of what's going on here. I think one thing to really bear in mind is that the Planning Commission is a land use body, and we look at what is the land being used for, and is that an appropriate location for that use. And when I look at the corner of 6th and Bonson, that says to me it's a great corner for apartment buildings. So I'm going to support the RA2 and the RA1 because as the land use goes, that's what probably should be in that location.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, as I look at this, and they did do some effort to leave a green zone along that east side, which I think is always favorable. You know, when you look at just the land use, it makes some sense to have the larger buildings toward the heavily traveled street. It does kind of zone with some of the other apartment buildings that are just across Bonson, so that makes some sense. And then reducing the scale as it goes farther to the north and toward the single family, that's exactly the kind of transitional changes that we like to see in planning and zoning matters. And so in a lot of ways, this makes a lot of sense to me as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, so I brought up before the PATH Committee. So the PATH Committee is a mayor-appointed body that is comprised of the public schools, the private schools, the law enforcement, traffic engineers, and other safety officials. I served on that committee for 4 years, and we never had this many people. And we looked at school by school by school. Every time that there was an issue, we looked at crosswalks, traffic patterns, speeds. There are many engineering, enforcement, education interventions that can be made. And Mr. Burke, I am thrilled that there's an Oakview Neighborhood Association. I wish every neighborhood had a neighborhood association that was as passionate as yours. So I'm pleased to see everybody at this meeting. What I would encourage you to do is when the PATH Committee meets in August, attend that meeting. Very, very few people really pay attention to safe routes to school. And we really need to pay, I mean, that's what we're talking about here. And although we're in land use, we're all parents. We all understand that it is scary to send our kids to school with the traffic patterns, not only at this intersection, but at many intersections. So we'd encourage you to do that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? I will interject a quick item here. Regarding the traffic, especially in a school zone, I completely empathize. I do not think, honestly, there is a school zone in this city that is free-flowing and generally could be better. I mean, it's something about adults getting in their car, going to school to pick up their kids, I think it degrades their IQ temporarily a lot, and there's just a lot of poor driving choices that are made in those areas. And I guess I've been guilty of it too in the past, but I'm on the Sertoma Avenue Raceway, 22nd Street Speedway. We have them too. Until the motorcycle officer shows up with the laser gun, starts getting a few people, then they start paying attention to school speed limit signs. It's just unfortunate that it's that way, but it is. So I feel you. I'm there. So any other comments, commissioners? I will ask for commission action on item number 13. Oh wait, we have a motion and a second already on the table. All in favor of item number 13 signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed of item number 13, same sign. Item number 13 is approved.
Item 14, 4554, 2016, conditional use for on sale within 500 feet of a sensitive land use located at 410 West 18th Street.
Jason Bieber, representing Planning and Building Services. This is an application by Patrick Saylor with the Co-op Natural Food Store here at Minnesota and 18th Street. The applicant would like to serve beer and wine within the existing grocery store, as well as having some events in the parking lot, similar to some of the other grocery stores in town. The proposed on-sale alcohol beverage establishment meets the criteria of the comprehensive plan. The co-op grocery store will be offering indoor beer sales similar to the other grocery stores within Sioux Falls. The outdoor event shouldn't impact adjacent land uses or properties. Because the application has provided clarity to indicate the nature and extent of the work proposed, staff does recommend approval of this conditional use permit with the following condition. We are requesting that an outdoor event space layout, design and detail be approved by the police department and planning department. We're just looking to make sure that they have enough parking and that it's not going to become an issue for the neighborhood. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioners, any question for staff? Thank you, Jason. Is the applicant here?
Patrick Saylor, Co-op Natural Foods, 410 West 18th Street.
Anything to add, Mr. Saylor?
Nope, that's about it. We have a couple summer parking lot events. We just, rather than have another company come in and serve beer for us, we want to make the money off of it, so we'd like to apply for that. So, yep.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Saylor, commissioners? Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address item number 14? Seeing none, I'll look for commission action.
Motion for approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving item number 14, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Item 14 is approved.
Item 15, 4639, 2016, conditional use for on-sale alcohol within 500 feet of a sensitive use located at south of West 33rd Street and east of South Lake Avenue.
The applicant here is John Ratzloff with Sioux Falls Pilots baseball program. It's located, as you can see, on the Augustana College. The applicant would like to serve beer and wine at the Augustana baseball field during their summer adult baseball league only. You can kind of see they want to set up a little temporary shed out by the existing baseball field to serve the beer and wine. The proposed on-sale alcoholic beverage establishment does meet the criteria of the comprehensive plan. The applicant will set up a small concession building just behind home plate and the existing stands to serve beer and wine to the fans. The sales will be minimal and will only happen during the Summer Collegiate League baseball games. This is similar to the events that they have had at the Sioux Falls Parks and Rec, Sherman and Harmadon for adult summer leagues, softball summer leagues. Because the application has provided clarity to indicate the location, nature, and extent of the work proposed, staff does recommend approval of this conditional use permit with the following conditions. The sales of on-sale beer and wine is limited to adult league baseball games held at the Ronkin baseball field. And the sales of the on-sale beer and wine is limited to May 15th to September 15th, the length of the actual baseball season. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioners, any question for staff? Thank you, Jason. Is the applicant here?
My name is Donald Karras. Mr. Radsloff is no longer involved with the pilots. I have taken his role and be happy to answer any of your questions about the season and what we're trying to accomplish with this new collegiate wood bat baseball league team.
Thank you. Any question, commissioners?
Mr. Chair, the dates that the city put in here as a recommendation, May 15th through September 15th, does that always cover all of the games referenced?
It would.
It would. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any members of the audience wish to discuss item number 15?
I'm Lois Stradland, and I live right across from Augustana. And I would have to say I'm against this because do you realize how much noise we can get in our neighborhood? Just a ball game that somebody won. I mean, you know, and this is probably a basketball game, but they can wake us all up when we've been sleeping. And it seems like to me, if these people have a little alcohol or something to drink, they're going to be more rowdy, not less. I mean, there's lots of college kids that are our neighbors that rent in our neighborhood. And if they need a place to have beer or alcohol of some kind, I'm sure that those kids would be willing to go for it. And also there's the traffic problem. You know, college kids usually drive fast. They do not drive slow, and I'm afraid if these people have alcohol and start serving it, they'll drive even faster. And I would say on the other side, most of us that live across the college enjoy it. But it seems like this would cause a problem, a headache for us, which, you know, we would soon have told everybody on the campus, you know, as well as the different city departments. Because this is a neighborhood, you know, this is not a college, but this is single-family dwelling around here.
Very good. Any questions, commissioners?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address item number 15? Seeing none, I will look for commission action.
Move for approval with the stipulations on conditions as stated. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
My name's Cliff Lund. I used to work at Augustana. I live close to Augustana. Tom Meyer is here. I know Tom Meyer very well. The problem we have is the alcohol. Augustana College is an alcohol-free campus. Security is already, when I was working there, was taking alcohol away, even from people that were 21 years old, walking on their campus. Now we're going to allow the sale of alcohol to these people at an increased price for somebody to make a profit, a big profit. They could go buy 12-pack for $18, they'll pay $6 a beer. You figure it out. These kids are going to buy it. They don't care. They're also, if it's outside of the stadium, they're going to be able to walk away from the stadium carrying those beers. I live on Colville Avenue. There are 3 houses on Colville Avenue. We went to the city and got no parking on our side of the street. Since we got no parking on our side of the street, the people who were going to football games, basketball games, the women's softball games, I haven't had more than a couple of empty beer cans in my yard. Before that, after every game, before every game, I could go out and fill a garbage bag. This isn't a good deal. Not for the people who live in the neighborhood. It's really not. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, commissioners? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can we bring up Jeff?
I'm sorry?
Can we bring up Jeff? Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about how a security management program works with the...
Yes. The police department requires security management plans through the liquor licensing and through the planning office on these conditional uses. So before they're able to do their sales and their licensing, this applicant has to go through that process. So then they have to be licensed and then having the aspect of showing their security management plan. How are they going to sell? How are they going to check for IDs? Those issues that this gentleman's bringing up, it's not a foolproof system, but basically it's not like, okay, you have the ability to go sell and we're not going to look into it. The police department will check and make sure that they know who's selling the alcohol, when they're selling the alcohol, where it's being sold at, where it's going to be able to be taken on and off the site, the security management aspects of how it's going to be distributed on this site. Plus now at this point, the police are aware of where it's going to be. I think one of the issues that needs to be aware here on this, and again, the applicant can come back up, but this isn't a Canaries game. This isn't even, I don't know what their attendance is going to be here, but not many people are going to be driving down and saying, I think we're going to stop by and go see this game. It's going to be a pretty small attended facility. It's not a big draw at this point, and who knows. And again, that's one of the things that we gave them a conditional use for, a small avenue. That's part of the security management aspect. So if you needed to call the applicant back up.
Mr. Chair, Jeff, yes, it's on Augie's property, so I'm assuming they were aware and they approve of everything that's going on?
Good point. It's on Augie's property. They're aware of it. They had to ask permission from them previously, and then that's again why we put that condition on it, that we didn't just give the conditional use for the parcel or for the campus. We specifically made it smaller. So again, if there's issues to try to address the neighbors, where if we would have just said Augustana has a license to sell, then it could have got larger. But we knew there may be some neighborhood questions and concerns. We tried to really narrow it down to a time period and a time location.
Thank you.
Very good.
Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if we could have the Augustana representative speak to this issue.
Tom Meyer with Augustana University. And we're really kind of a very interested landlord in this process and a lessor. The Sioux Falls Pilots are an independent organization. They're in the process of erecting a fence that would encompass the entire baseball complex. So there would be a gate for the people to pay tickets to get in and out, and other security things that you would typically see for an organization that's going to be selling beer and wine. So.
Okay. Very good. Any other questions, commissioners? Thank you. Anyone else in the audience would like to address item number 15? Seeing none? Oh, I do. Okay. My apologies. Any other discussion, commissioners? All right, all in favor of item number 15, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, same sign. Item number 15 is approved. Thank you.
Item 16, 4327, 2016. Alternative site plan for parking reduction alternative plan located at 4000 West 41st Street.
This is located at the existing McDonald's restaurant site. McDonald's does plan to raise this existing 5,600 square foot restaurant with drive-through and construct a brand new 5,300 square foot restaurant with a drive-through McDonald's. The applicant does indicate that less parking is needed as required by the ordinance because essentially 70% of all their business is actually handled through the drive-through or customers heading through the drive-through instead of going inside. The site plan does indicate a new 5,258 square foot restaurant located in the south central portion of the site. The site plan does indicate 57 parking spaces provided, which equates to 1 parking space for every 92 square feet. Excuse me. Which is less than the 75 square feet, 1 for every 75 square feet as required by the ordinance. Further, 2 of the drive-through lanes will have the proposed 3 stacking spaces, as you can see on the map. Their plan does indicate, as I indicated before, 70% of all their traffic uses drive-through. That's why it necessitates them to have 2 drive-through lanes instead of the existing 1. Further, the proposed building is actually 400 square feet smaller than the existing building that's currently on site, and they are proposing a 20% increase in parking spaces from what is currently existing, which is roughly 11 spaces. The applicant has provided the necessary parking study criteria as indicated in section 160.600 of the parking reduction alternative plans. The parking plan indicates the increased customers going through the drive-through. Finally, the parking ratio is going from 1 parking space for every 121 square feet, which currently exists on site, to they are proposing 1 parking space for every 92 square feet. So you can see that they're increasing the parking significantly. Because the application has provided the land use criteria to warrant the reduction and the amount of parking should be sufficient for the proposed building, staff does recommend approval of an alternative plan for a parking reduction. And we also are stipulating that the site has at least 44 parking spaces that if we get down the line and they have to do some additional right-of-way for South Shirley Avenue, that some of this plan can be tweaked a little bit. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Jason. Commissioners?
Mr. Chair, so the traffic comment about the realigning the 41st Street and Shirley, the applicant's aware of that and knows probably what's coming?
Yep, the applicants we've actually deferred this a couple months. So they've been really willing and able to work with the city engineering department for the Shirley Avenue. So they're kind of been a partner in us acquiring additional right-of-way. So,
thanks.
Thank you, Jason. Is the applicant here?
Thank you, Chair Gasper and council members. Kathleen Hammer from Landform Professional Services representing McDonald's. We are happy to work with the city here, and we are here to answer any questions for you.
Commissioners? Very good. Thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to item number 16? Seeing none, I'll look for commission action.
Motion for approval?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, does that include the recommendation of minimum 44 spaces?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other discussion? All those in favor of item number, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, in light of the Shirley Avenue potential work, I think this is a good choice. So.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah.
All those in favor of item number 16, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Item number 16 passes.
Item 17, 4633, 2016, alternative site plan for an alternative landscape and buffer yard located south of West Madison Street and west of North Ebenezer Avenue.
The owner here is Ryan Companies. The applicant is requesting, is proposing, to place six of the, the applicant is requesting, to place the required front yard trees, roughly 6 of them, 10 out of the 18 front yard trees along Ebenezer, outside of the required front yard setback. As you can see by the site plan, there is an existing 30-foot drainage easement running along North Ebenezer Avenue. And in these drainage easement, landscaping such as berms and trees are prohibited, so they can make sure that they stay open and it drains properly. 1 tree for every 50 feet of street frontage is required for a total of 18 trees along Ebenezer. These trees are required to be placed in the required front yard setback, which is 25 feet in a I-1 light industrial district. The applicant is proposing to move these roughly 33 feet from the front property line, so only actually 8 feet back, farther back than what's actually allowed by the ordinance. And that's, as I mentioned before, specifically because of that drainage area that's outlined in red there. The applicant is proposing to place those 18 trees in the defined front yard, but not that front yard setback. They will be located on the east side of the proposed parking lot, and still should meet the intent of requiring the trees in the front yard to screen the parking lot from traffic going up North Ebenezer Avenue. If this application is approved, the applicant can place the required front yard trees outside of the front yard setback and in the location as indicated on this existing site plan. If this application is denied, the applicant would then probably have to move all of these trees and cluster them along West Delbridge Street to actually meet the intent of the ordinance. Because the subject application should meet the intent of the landscaping requirements within the Shape Places zoning ordinance, staff does recommend approval of this application, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioners? Great. Thank you, Jason. Is the applicant here?
Good evening, Lori Schwimmen with Ryan Companies.
Anything to add, Lori?
Nothing.
Any questions for Lori, commissioners?
I guess I just have one. So it looks like Sukup is your neighbor, and they have a nice line of trees on their front property too. Is yours? It looks like yours is going to just continue.
But they're also further
back.
in.
Yep, it looks like yours will be in line with theirs then.
We're going to try.
Okay, awesome.
If
It'll look good. Hint.
Good. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience wish to address item number 17? Seeing none, I'll look for commission action.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
That's why we have the alternative landscape plan, is so we can make the right decision.
Yep.
Well said. Any other discussion? All in favor of item number 17, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Item 17 is approved.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.